Hello and welcome. We're really glad you're here. You're about to watch. Hey, am I the only one seeing this? 4 signs something needs to change in your family business. Over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to help you understand why you may be carrying concerns that other people don't seem to see yet, why the same issues often keep showing up, and what you can do next if something doesn't feel quite right. This isn't about diagnosing your family business. It's not about finding fault. And it's definitely not about creating more conflict. It's about helping you gain clarity. Because when you understand what's really creating the pressure, you can take the next step with more confidence.
And if you found yourself watching this mini course, there's a good chance something has been sitting in the back of your mind for a while. Maybe things don't feel as easy as they used to. Maybe conversations keep going around in circles, and maybe decisions seem harder than they should be. Or perhaps you're carrying concerns that nobody else seems to be talking about, and you've started wondering, am I the only one seeing this? If that's you, you're in exactly the right place.
Before we begin, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Mike.
And I'm Lisa. Together, we help couples, partnerships, and family businesses create more calm, more alignment, and profitability without damaging the relationships that matter most.
And this isn't work we teach from a textbook. We've lived it. We both grew up and survived family businesses. We both worked in family businesses. We own family businesses. We've experienced partnership challenges ourselves. We've seen firsthand how quickly pressure in a relationship can start affecting a business and how pressure in a business can start affecting relationships.
Over the years, we've worked alongside many family businesses and partnerships. And one thing we've learned is this: awareness almost never arrives equally. Usually one person notices first. And that's exactly what today's mini course is about. We've experienced partnership challenges ourselves, and when we say we've lived this, we really mean it. Both Mike and I grew up in family businesses, so we know that a business is never just a business. It comes home with you. It sits at the dinner table, it affects the mood in the house, and it can shape how people speak to each other, avoid each other, or carry pressure silently. We've seen firsthand how easy it is for people to become consumed by the business while believing they're doing it for the people they love.
And we've experienced that ourselves. In fact, there was a period where Lisa and I were literally living on opposite sides of the world. Lisa was in the UK supporting family. I was here in New Zealand. At the same time, we were navigating family responsibilities, business decisions, financial pressure, and our relationship. From the outside, people might have thought we had it all together, but there were moments where one of us could feel the strain before the other could see it. What got us through wasn't pretending everything was fine. It was creating space for honest conversations, understanding where the pressure was really coming from, and taking one step at a time.
And that's a big part of why we do this work today. We're not here as perfect examples, you can see that. We're here as people who know what it feels like when business, family, money, pressure, and relationships all become tangled together. So let's get started. As you look at these statements, notice whether any feel familiar. Something doesn't feel right. We keep having the same conversations. Decisions seem harder than they should be. I'm carrying concerns nobody else seems to be worried about. One of the hardest parts about this experience is that it can feel lonely. Everyone else appears busy, everyone else appears okay, and meanwhile you're carrying a growing sense that something really needs attention. So if you've had those thoughts recently, you're not alone. In fact, it's much more common than people realise.
One of the biggest myths we see is that everyone becomes aware at the same time. They don't. Awareness almost never arrives equally. Usually one person notices it first, not because they're smarter, not because they're more capable, not because they're right. They're simply the first person to see something that eventually becomes obvious to everyone else. The challenge is that being first can feel incredibly uncomfortable. We've seen this so many times. One person starts noticing the tone of conversations changing, or that decisions are taking longer, or that people seem more frustrated, or that there's less laughter than there used to be. But because nothing dramatic has happened yet, Everyone else says, it's fine, we'll work it out, you're overthinking. And that can leave the person who noticed first feeling like they're the problem.
Yeah, and we want to say very clearly, noticing first doesn't make you difficult. It doesn't make you negative, and it doesn't mean you're trying to create conflict. Often it simply means you're tuned in. In our relationship, I've often been the one who senses the emotional pressure before Mike sees it. Mike might be focused on practical solutions, deadlines, opportunities, and I'm noticing how we're feeling, how we're communicating, and whether we're actually connected. And neither is right or wrong, they're simply different perspectives. So, sign number one. The first sign is feeling like you're carrying the concern alone. You keep thinking about it, you keep noticing it, you keep wondering about it, but nobody else seems concerned. And because nobody else is reacting, many people start questioning themselves. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm making something out of nothing. And that's often where self-doubt begins.
You keep noticing, you keep worrying, you keep thinking, yet everyone else seems to carry on as normal. If you've been asking yourself whether you're overreacting, we'd simply encourage you not to dismiss what you're seeing. It doesn't mean you're right about everything, but it may mean you're noticing something important.
We often describe this feeling as the 2 a.m. feeling. You wake up in the middle of the night, nothing terrible has happened, nobody's had a huge argument, no crisis has occurred, yet something inside of you is saying, this doesn't feel sustainable. You can't always explain it. You can't always prove it, but you can feel it.
And we've had many people come into our world from exactly that place, not because they had a clearly defined problem, but because they finally admitted, I don't think I can keep carrying this on my own.
So, what are you noticing? Let's pause and think about that. Maybe it's exhaustion, frustration, overwhelm, and tension for you personally. And for your relationship, repeated conversations, feeling unheard and tense, and like you're walking on eggshells. And in the business, these things show up as slow decisions, firefighting, a lack of accountability, and maybe that everything feels like it depends on one person. The important thing to understand is that these are symptoms, and symptoms are clues, but they aren't always the real problem.
Take a moment. Which of these symptoms feels familiar right now? Pause the video if you'd like to and take proper time to reflect.
So, sign number two, the same problems keep coming back. The second sign is about recurring issues. Different week, different month, same conversation. Maybe it's about money, maybe it's about communication or decision making, maybe it's expectations. Whatever it is, it keeps returning. And that's usually a clue that something deeper is going on.
What we often see is people trying to solve the visible issue, the argument, the frustration, the conflict, but those things are often sitting above the surface. Underneath are the expectations, communication patterns, pressure, alignment issues. In other words, the symptom isn't usually the real problem. A really common example is money. People think they're arguing about money or spending or pricing or cash flow or somebody not pulling their weight. And sometimes those things absolutely need attention. But often when we dig deeper, we discover the real issue isn't money at all.
Yeah, that's right. It might be trust, it might be fear, it might be different risk tolerance. One person wants growth, the other wants security. One person wants to invest, the other wants certainty. So they keep arguing about money when actually they're arguing about something much, much deeper. That's why solving the symptom really creates lasting change. So why does this happen? We might ask ourselves. People can work in the same business, attend the same meetings, look at the same numbers, live in the same house, and still see completely different realities. Because everyone has different priorities, different expectations, different fears, different definitions of success.
And this is called misalignment. Misalignment isn't bad people. It's not a lack of care. It's not a lack of effort. It's simply people pulling in different directions without realizing it. And the longer that continues, the more pressure builds.
One thing we've learned is that alignment doesn't mean agreeing on everything. And Mike and I certainly don't agree on everything. In fact, if you've ever worked with us, you'll know we often see things quite differently.
Alignment isn't sameness. Alignment is understanding. It's knowing what matters to each other. It's knowing what you're building. It's knowing how decisions get made. And it's knowing how to navigate differences without damaging the relationship.
So that brings us to sign number 3, pressure. Pressure is showing up somewhere. So pressure doesn't stay hidden forever. Eventually it shows up, and it usually appears in one of 3 places: personally, in our relationship, or in our business.
So when we know that pressure usually shows up in these 3 places, what do we actually mean? Maybe it's showing up in you, your energy, your well-being, your stress levels. Maybe it's showing up in relationships, communications, expectations, connection, or perhaps it's showing up in the business, roles, decision-making, accountability. The interesting thing is that pressure rarely stays in just one area. Eventually it affects all 3. This framework actually came from real life. People usually arrive wanting help with the business. They're worried about performance, growth, profit, decision-making.
But as we talk, we often discover the pressure isn't only in the business. It's affecting sleep, confidence, stress levels, energy, relationships. And we've experienced that ourselves. There have been seasons where business pressure affected our relationship, and relationship pressure affected our business. And personal pressure affected both. That's why we look at the whole picture, because businesses don't operate separately from people. People create businesses. So for you, which area feels most affected right now? Me, us, or the business? Pause and reflect if you'd like. So the 4th sign is perhaps the simplest. You know something needs to change. You may not know exactly what, but you do know continuing exactly as you are just isn't sustainable.
What doesn't work is more pressure, more blame, more convincing, more assumptions, working harder. Most people seem to try harder, but harder isn't usually the answer. The challenge isn't awareness. The challenge isn't caring. The challenge isn't commitment. The challenge is knowing where to start, and that's where many people get stuck.
Yeah, most people don't need somebody to tell them what's wrong. They already know something feels off. What they need, though, is clarity, a way to see exactly what's really happening without blame, without judgment, without creating unnecessary conflict.
Because once people can see the real source of pressure, they can stop trying to solve the wrong problem, and that alone often creates relief.
So imagine if conversations felt easier, decisions felt clearer, expectations were understood, people felt heard. Imagine the pressure wasn't all on you. Imagine that momentum returns. And imagine there was a lot more trust and a lot less stress.
So if nothing changes over the next 12 months, what concerns you most? Take a moment with that question. Let's take a step back for a moment. We've covered a lot in a short space of time. What we've found is that when something isn't working in a family, business, or partnership, it often shows up through these 4 signs.
So in summary again, sign number 1, you're carrying the concern alone. You keep noticing things, you keep thinking about them, you keep worrying about them, but nobody else seems as concerned as you are.
Sign number 2, the same problems keep coming back. Different week, different month, same conversation, same frustration. The symptoms may change, but the underlying issue remains.
Sign number 3, pressure is showing up somewhere. And maybe it's showing up in you, your energy, your well-being, your stress. Maybe it's showing up in your relationships, or maybe it's showing up in the business itself.
And sign number 4, you know something needs to change. You may not know exactly what, you may not know where to start, but deep down, you know continuing exactly as you are isn't sustainable.
The most important thing to remember is that you don't need all 4 signs for something to need attention. Even one of these can be enough.
And if you've found yourself nodding along to several of them today, that's probably worth paying attention to.
Definitely, because awareness isn't the problem. The next step is understanding what's really creating that pressure and then deciding what to do about it. And that's what we'll look at next.
Here's the good news. You don't need to solve everything today. You don't need everyone to agree. You don't need a perfect plan. You simply need somewhere safe to begin. One of the biggest misconceptions we see is that change requires a huge conversation or a dramatic decision or everybody suddenly agreeing.
Yeah, and often change starts much smaller than that. It starts with awareness, it starts with honesty, it starts with asking, what is actually within my control right now? And that question alone can be incredibly empowering. So before you take the next step, most people want answers immediately. But the question is, where is the pressure actually coming from? Understand that first, because what you can't see clearly, you can't change effectively. So what happens next? If you've watched this training and found yourself nodding along thinking, yes, that's exactly what's happening for us, then we'd love to help you take the next step. The reality is that every family business is different. The pressure might be coming from communication challenges, unclear roles, different expectations, succession, the conversations around that, decision-making, financial stress, or simply the fact that nobody has had the space to stop and talk about what's really going on. And that's why we've created a complimentary 20-minute call. This isn't a coaching session, it's simply a chance for us to have a conversation with you. We'll help you take a closer look at what's creating the pressure you're experiencing, explore what's within your control, and identify what might help create some positive movement for you. Sometimes just one conversation can provide more clarity than months of carrying it around in your own head. You don't need to have all the answers, you don't need to know exactly what's wrong, and you certainly don't need everyone else in the business to be ready. So if you're the person who's been carrying the awareness that something needs to change, this call is for you. So if today's mini course resonated with you, we'd love to meet you. Click the button below, choose a time that works for you, and let's have a conversation about what's really going on and what your next step could look like. We look forward to meeting you soon.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Wherever you're at right now, we hope you've realized something important. You don't have to carry the concern alone, and you don't have to figure it out alone. We'd love to take that next step with you together.